Hello and welcome to Model Aviation Live. If you are watching live, happy Friday to you. I was thinking earlier today when we came up with the idea of having this show a little over a year ago, I originally suggested we have it on the 15th of the month just because that's an easy date to remember. But it turns out, as you well know, that AMA airs on that date, and it would probably be a little bit of a challenge to have both shows on the same day. So the idea came up to have it on the third Friday. So I think Friday works out to be a great day to have the show, and obviously look forward every month to sharing information with you about Model Aviation Magazine, Park Pilot Magazine, AMA, government relations, and talking to a lot of great people that are involved in our hobby. Today, one thing I want to mention is, if you watch some of my previous shows, some previous Model Aviation Live, I talk sometimes about my great aunt, Betty, who worked as a Curtiss cadet and built Curtiss Helldivers, the dive bomber, in Columbus, Ohio during World War II. Basically, she was a Rosie the Riveter. And I'm happy to share with you all that this Sunday is her 98th birthday. And she still lives alone in her house. And she actually has people come in that help her. But I spent her 95th birthday with her. And she lives in Maryland. And this Sunday is her 98th birthday. So we're really excited about that. And I'm looking forward to reaching out to her and wishing her a happy birthday. We actually have a member who started a company that sells aviation apparel. And so I'm wearing some of that aviation apparel. And the name of the company is Dogfight Apparel. And a gentleman named Thomas started the company. So I'm wearing a Sopwith Aviation Company hat. And I've also got on a Fokker t-shirt. So he also sells things like Lajin socks, which I also have. And just all kinds of neat vintage and World War II apparel, vintage and World War I apparel. So if you're interested in that, definitely take a look at his website. And I got my apparel just recently, and I've gotten a lot of comments on it because, it's neat to showcase some of that early aviation, and especially if you like World War I. And as you know, I've got a Sopwith pup right above me, and I've got a Fokker Eindecker right behind me. So I'm really into the World War I aviation and Dawn Patrol events. So, check out Dogfight Apparel and see if you might find some things on there you like. As I said, I have the socks as well as this, but I didn't wear them because I didn't want to try to show them to you on my feet. It was much easier to show you in the camera. So definitely check that out. Last month when we did the show, I told you, if you hadn't heard, about a new show, a TV series called Masters of the Air, which is going to be done by Spielberg and Tom Hanks, much like The Pacific and Band of Brothers. And Masters of the Air is a book. So last month I actually showed you the cover of the book. I bought the book. I want to read the book. It's about the 8th Air Force in World War II. And I want to read the book before the show comes out. Well, so I'm about to start that book because I just finished the book I was reading that was ahead of it, and I want to share this with you. So this book came out in June. It's called The Rifle, and it's by Andrew Biggio. And basically what this book is about is the author, Andrew, is a Marine who served in Iraq and Afghanistan, and he came home suffering from PTSD, and he was trying to figure out ways to cope with his PTSD. And he came up with the idea of connecting with World War II veterans who, I'm sure many of them had PTSD, and how they managed that and how they went on to live productive lives. And he bought a surplus M1, which you can see right here, right there. He bought a surplus M1 Garand, which is the most commonly carried firearm rifle in World War II by the U.S. troops. He bought one as surplus, military surplus. And so what he did is he took the rifle with him as he went and met these veterans, and he got them to sign it. So if you can see that, there's a lot of signatures on it. So as he would go and meet the veterans, he would have them sign the rifle and tell their stories, and he recorded their stories on his iPhone. And I guess he met about 150 World War II vets. He also was hoping to meet someone that served with his great uncle. His great uncle, unfortunately, was killed in World War II, and he wanted to know more. And as it turns out, he did meet someone I don't think this is giving anything away. He did meet someone who served with his uncle and was there the day his uncle sadly lost his life. So what this book is it's about his experience coming home from Iraq and Afghanistan and suffering from PTSD, and how meeting 150 World War II veterans really changed his life. And he shares their combat stories. And in this book, you'll read about aviators, you'll read about people in the Navy and the Marines and the Army, you'll read about all the places that people were deployed to in World War II. So it's a really, really interesting book. And as it turns out, the rifle is going to be displayed at the World War II Museum shortly, I think later this year, that they're going to actually display his rifle. So I just thought I'd share, because I know a lot of people appreciate history. This one isn't specifically aviation history, although there are some aviators in the book, but it's a very interesting story and journey that he went on over a few years. And it just came out, the book just came out in June. So I wanted to share that with you all in case that would be of interest to people that are watching. And next up, I want to talk to you and remind you that the Nats are going to get ready to start again next week. As you probably are aware, we normally run the Nats for about 5 weeks straight. That is the outdoor Nats. The indoor Nats happens elsewhere. But this year we were supposed to have 2 world competitions, so there was a break in the Nats schedule to allow for the world's competitions. But because of COVID and some limitations to travel, we had to postpone or cancel. One event was postponed, one was canceled. So basically we had 2 weeks of no Nats participants. So next week the Nats begins again. Another thing I want to share with you that hopefully you're aware of is the National Fun Fly and Membership Meeting is happening here at AMA at the IAC. It's from Friday, July 30th to Sunday, August 1st. And it's flying, all types of flying, control line, free flight, RC. So hopefully if you can attend, come out and join us. And also you can come to the membership meeting. If you aren't able to attend, there is going to be a live stream of the membership meeting. So you can still take advantage of the live stream, even if you're not able to attend. So hopefully you can come, but if you can't, and you want to hear from all of our district VPs and leadership, I would recommend that you tune into our live stream. So at this point, I'm about to talk a little bit about our guest, and actually we've got a question from Victor. Who is Jon? So Jon Barnes is our guest today, and Jon has written for Sport Aviator, which was a website that we had many years ago, going back about 13, 15 years ago. Jon has written for Park Pilot. Jon has written for Model Aviation. And before Jon wrote for us, he wrote for RC Groups. And that's where I met Jon, because before I came to work for AMA, I also wrote articles for RC Groups. So he's written many, many articles for us, dozens of articles for us, event coverage, reviews, and he's very interested these days in Edf Jets. He's also very interested in multi-rotors, but I don't want to tell his whole story. We want to hear it right from Jon. So I want to welcome Jon Barnes to the show. Hi, Jon.
Hey, Jay. Hello.
Thank you so much for joining me.
Pretty cool to be here. Yeah, I've never done anything like this. I love Vic's question. Who is Jon? I would say the same thing. Who is this guy?
Well, if I'm not mistaken, we did do an I Am the AMA on you on the back page. Is that right?
True. Yeah, it's been a couple years ago.
Right. So for those that don't know Jon Barnes, tell us, Jon, how did you get started in aero modeling?
Wow. I think it was I was probably working my first job out of high school, and a bunch of us guys that worked together, we started playing around with surface out in the parking lot at lunchtime. And I don't know, I think a lot of guys go through this phase. We kind of got bored, so we created our fun by having demolition derbies at lunchtime with our surface vehicles, and it was no holds barred. You know, you could just destroy each other. And when that got tired, we started drifting into aviation because it was a little more challenging. And yeah, we went hard into airplanes after that. We would leave work and head straight to the field and fly till dusk. And yeah, it was fun. And I've pretty much stuck with it most of my life. I got out for a little while and came back right when everything was going strong with lipos and brushless power systems, and yeah, it's been nothing but a blast.
And then as I said, we met through RC groups, and you were writing for RC groups. How long did you work with RC groups?
Wow, it seems like it was a couple years, because I know that site was around long before I ever kind of tapped into it. Yeah, I forget the exact time frame when that site got rolling, but yeah, you and I and a bunch of other guys had a lot of good years putting together reviews over there. That was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And, RC groups connected me with some people when, I lived in Florida at the time, and RC groups connected me with some people that I ended up flying with. And we started kind of basically a park pilot club, but this was before there was a park pilot program. And I got permission to fly at a middle school that I had attended previously from the principal. And we would meet there on the weekends and fly. And it was in Seminole, Florida. And one of the gentlemen who flew there just dubbed it Seminole Crash Fest. I mean, I wouldn't say there was a lot of crashes, but that's what he called it. So all of a sudden on RC groups, it was called Seminole Crash Fest. And we would actually have people who were coming to Florida to either visit relatives or coming to Florida for work. And they would reach out on RC groups and say, hey, can I come by and fly with you guys, this Saturday or this Sunday or next Saturday or next Sunday? So we got to meet a bunch of people who, we talked to on RC groups, but never met. And they would show up and fly. I mean, we would have about 15 people on a Saturday or Sunday, which was really neat to do that. But, Victor says that he was joking. So,
And I'm pretty sure I know who Vic is from RC
the snake.
Yeah, he's down south of me a little bit. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I think he's down in LA in the basin there. And he's I think he and I have Edf Jets in common. He's a big jet guy too.
Right. And then where I flew, again called Seminole Crash Fest, the Tiger Moth World Tour came there when the GWS Tiger Moth was being flown all across the United States, and I think it did make it outside of the U.S. And so it came there, and we got to fly it. I showed a picture of this in a previous Model Aviation Live, but it's now in the AMA Museum. So, I never would have imagined that. And so it came to the museum shortly after I started at AMA, and it was kind of strange, that when I heard it was being donated. And then later I flew the Wings Across America. That was with the Stevens Aero model Squirt. It was a similar thing, but with the Tiger Moth, it was shipped, and with the Stephen aeroplane, it was actually hand delivered pilot to pilot. And Jim Cherry, our previous executive director, was supposed to fly it, but sadly he passed away, and I was asked to fly it instead. And then that one got donated to our museum. So we actually have the Tiger Moth and the Squirt that both did these world tours that I flew both, just out of coincidence, and they're both in the AMA museum. So that's kind of neat. Yeah, I went to the second ever CEF in Georgia. It was the first time it was at Hodges Hobbies, but it was the second CEF. And that was probably a couple of years after I really got into electrics a lot. And I wanted to go to a big event and see a lot more aircraft and, celebrating electric flight. And then I went to CEF every year and got my flying friends to go, and started taking my father, who also flies. I think we went for 6 or 8 years in a row until I came to AMA, and then I went back for, I think it was the 10th anniversary, but obviously I don't make it every year. What was the first big event you went to, John?
Well, I was just listening to you talk, thinking like I've always been a little bit envious, because it seems like most of the major events are east of the Mississippi, and us folks out here on the West Coast doesn't seem like we have near as many choice events like that. So like I've never made CEF, I've never made any of those big ones, and some of them have even ceased being held in the last 5 or 10 years. I've done some of the turbine jet events. I don't have my turbine waiver, but like out here, there's a couple different events that have been held through the years. And yeah, sometimes I'd go down to the basin where Vic and a lot of those guys fly. They would hold some not quite as major a scale event as what you guys have back east there. But you were talking about smaller events like that deal you had going in Florida, and years ago, we started going to one over in Vegas that was called Superfly, and it's morphed a lot since then. And like the venue moved to Chino Valley in Arizona. I think that was the last time that I went, and now it's up in St. George, Utah. And again, this is a pretty low key event, just a bunch of guys that have similar tastes, and I think most of them are maybe more this side of the country. I know Ben comes over from Michigan. But yeah, maybe some of you remember John Morgan. He was the real driving force behind that event, because John would come out from Tennessee, and he was an amazing scratch builder. The guy just made some amazing planes. Everything he would spend the whole season working up a couple amazing planes and then bring him to Superflyer. And he recently passed, and everyone's missing him a lot. But I'm thinking this year I might sneak over to St. George there in Utah. I haven't been to that event yet. And again, much smaller than all these major events back east, but still fun. It's just fun to go and hang out.
You mentioned John Morgan. He actually wrote a construction article for the magazine on one of his foam warbirds. I would see him. He would come to CEF every year, and I kept asking him to write for us and write, because he, as you said, he was an amazing craftsman. And I asked him to write an article for us on one of his airplanes. Finally convinced him to do so. But I know that everybody that appreciated scale aircraft would always go and see him at CEF. What is John? What has he brought? And I remember one of the years I went, he brought a Helldiver, and as I mentioned early in the show, my great aunt built them during World War II, so that really got my attention, that he built a Helldiver. But he built so many cool airplanes, and yeah, I think it was last year, if I'm not mistaken, he passed away.
Yeah.
And I was really saddened because I hadn't been to CEF in a few years, so it'd been a few years since I'd seen him. But yes, he was quite the craftsman. Arizona Electric Festival, that's another big one. Have you ever been to that one,
Yeah,
Sean?
yeah. And I was going to say, I think I did make it down there once or twice. Some of the times I would do event coverage because I wrote for Fly RC magazine for quite a few years. It seems like they're toward the end of it being in print. I had the dubious title of West Coast editor, which sounds bigger than it really was. It just meant that I had to generate a lot of content for the magazine, but it was fun. Yeah, I've always enjoyed writing and shooting media of the hobby almost as much as the hobby itself. So it's kind of a perfect fit to get to work with you in Model Aviation magazine, Fly RC back in the day, RC groups, all of that. I seldom go to the field without some piece of camera gear with me. It's always like first nature. Grab a bag. Got to have a camera in case somebody's flying something new, or I get to see a new model that I haven't seen yet.
Well, I mentioned right before you came on the show that I think, in my opinion, that as far as what you fly, you've really gravitated towards Edf Jets and really big into multi-rotors with some type of camera where you can do photos or videos. Would you say that that's accurate? That's what you're most interested in currently?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the great thing about this hobby. I'm sure just about anybody that's into it would agree, is there's so many different genres, and then you add in like technology always developing, and you get new products. And so like I drifted away, and I mean, back in the day, nobody really played around with electric powered aircraft because they were nickel metal hydrides and NiCad batteries, and they were heavy, and your flight durations are ridiculously short. So it was, I remember having like an electric glider, and it was just like, why am I doing this? The payoff's just not there. Then when I came back, we were just starting to springboard into lipos and brushless power systems, and suddenly electric became just the next best thing. And now I mean, not too many of us even play around with internal combustion engines anymore. We have one or two guys at our club, which has about 70 or 80 members that occasionally bring a nitro powered bird out. But yeah, right now I would say I'm probably like the staying power of the genres I've liked has been EDF Jets. And just in the last year or so, multi-rotors. And I played around with FPV a little bit, I would say 3-4 years ago, when like the flight controllers were the Hobby King KK flight controllers. And for me, though, I have to wear glasses. And so like the whole goggle experience was a little bit unwieldy. And I tried running a screen on a tripod and, always fighting the glare. And so I just kind of fizzled, didn't really stick with that. And then, this amazing thing called the DJI digital system kind of pulled me back in. And I remember searching for quite some time, like, can I wear glasses with those DJI goggles? And when I found out, oh yeah, definitely they're designed for it, then I was in, and I've been in hard for the last 6 or 12 months probably.
Now, you did have some experience with DJI products. I remember Phantoms and whatnot that you've had a few different ones. Was that your first exposure to having your own multi-rotor?
Well, as far as DJI, like I think I started with a Phantom 2, or and then a 3, and then then I kind of had a small hangar of DJI birds, because when I saw the original Inspire 1, man, that just blew my mind. I mean, that thing was so high tech, top speed of 55 miles an hour, takes off, the landing gear retracts, and now your camera's got an unobstructed 360 view. um, I eventually bought one, and that one I just can't let it go. Like the cool factor, and I occasionally get it out and dust it off and fly it. Sadly, DJI's not doing the right thing in my opinion, because you can't even buy batteries for it anymore, and the batteries are very much proprietary. It's not like you can just go buy any other battery or even build any other battery. Guys are trying to figure out a way to do it. But yeah, my Inspire 1, and its days are numbered, because I got 2 batteries. One I had tank on me already, so when the batteries die, that amazing piece of technology is dead. Then I think I picked up a Mavic Pro, which is probably still my all-time favorite, because it uses their proprietary OcuSync technology. So I have DJI made goggles before they made their digital FPV goggles. Maybe you've seen, it's like a box goggle, white, big goofy looking thing, but that works with the Mavic Pro. You can wear glasses under it, no cables attached. So like, I can throw a battery in the Mavic Pro, fire it up, goggles on my head, fire it up, phone going with the app, and be ready to fly pretty quick with a 22-minute flight duration. And yeah, the tech, yeah, that's the goggles. And again, they don't make those anymore. So if you have them and they work for you, you have to kind of hang on to them. I think I bought a backup pair at one point because I was so worried about the technology going away. But I still have my Mavic Pro. I love it. It's pretty amazing for what it'll do. I've got a lot of confidence in the technology. For us guys that fly, line of sight with fixed wing planes, it's a big deal to get comfortable, taking a drone out to where, like with my eyes, I can't see that good. I got to have a spotter if I get too far out. But the technology behind DJI and Autel and some of these other drones, it's amazing what they can do with GPS and stabilization. And then probably the last little guy I picked up was the Mavic Mini. Now they've since come out with the Mavic Mini 2, which I'm tempted, I confess, because I believe it's OcuSync. This is more Wi-Fi, so the range isn't as good. But 249 grams, which technically somewhat keeps it under the FAA's radar. As far as, you don't need to register it, you still need to obey all the rules, of course, but they don't care about it. It's too light, and it's amazing what this little guy can do. Like the quality of the media, as I'm sure a lot of people know. But yeah, so the DJI birds are cool. I definitely love them. Still own 3 of them. Still use 3 of them. But this is where I'll say, honestly, you're not really flying them. And I mean, I could ruffle people's feathers with that, but it's an aerial tripod. I mean, you set it up, you put it somewhere out there, and it'll stay there. I mean, you can, take off your goggles, go get a coffee, come back. It'll stay there until the battery goes dead, and it'll fall out of the sky. I mean, very little flying. You're just positioning it, which is cool. I mean, you can't deny the media these things can generate is mind blowing. It used to take a helicopter with expensive camera gear to do now what a $1,000 drone can do, and even do better than the helicopter in some ways.
It's interesting talking about DJI, because I have my first multi-rotor was a DJI Flame Wheel F550 that I built. I still have it, and I was having a discussion this morning with Michael Smith, our director of our museum, about donating it to our museum, because we have a multi-rotor section in the museum, and I was talking to our museum director Michael Smith about donating that to him, because that's really early, and certainly for DJI. Yeah, so there it is right there.
Is that using DJI's NASA flight controller?
Yes, mine has a NASA. Yes, yes. So there was the 4 motored version, the F450, and then I think there was a 330, a 450 and the 550, and that's the 550 that we're seeing on
Yeah,
screen.
it seems like forever ago, but it honestly wasn't that long ago. But yeah, like
2012.
my initial entry into FPV, that's what we were playing with, F450s, and there was some other Hobby King was pumping out some different size frames. I had a little hexacopter, and pretty neat stuff. But yeah, where it's at now is pretty exciting, and yeah, maybe you were going to go in that direction, but that's what's really got me back into FPV is the digital system, because it sounds so cliche to say it, but once you put a pair of these DJI digital goggles on, everybody has the same response. Usually it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. And the first time I put mine on and I had my drone sitting in the grass at the club field, and I just sat there and watched some little tiny bug crawling up a blade of grass. That's what you can see. And yeah, compared to analog, I mean, I have a few analog drones and kind of a pair of cheap Fat Shark Scout goggles that, again, is something I can wear glasses inside of so I can actually see the screen. But yeah, the difference between digital and analog, yeah, I could probably ignite a war, because I know a lot of guys still swear by analog, but there's no breakup with the digital. They handle breakup in signal a little differently. You can set it so it'll get a little bit blurry in the periphery if the signal starts degrading, but keep the center focused. But yeah, it's just amazing technology. And one of the fellows at our club, and I thank him for it now, but most of the guys that fly these FPV quads nowadays know that Betaflight's generally the software that runs the flight controller, and you can run stabilization, because like a DJI drone, you take your hands off the sticks, and there it stays forever. Well, you can set up these FPV quads with some stabilization, horizon mode, angle mode. And one of the veteran guys at our field is like, John, don't mess with those modes. Acro, only fly acro. And that's kind of hard to do, because in acro mode, if you put it in this orientation, it stays in that orientation until you tell it to come back the other way. You're flying it 100% of the time from takeoff to landing. So that can be a little unnerving, but it's fun. It's so much fun because you are flying it. You're flying it from start to finish. And what they can do now, they're just as aerobatic as a fixed wing model, and even more so when you watch some of the freestyle videos that these extreme quad FPV quad pilots put out. Just blows your mind what these guys can do with these. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'll never get there. I'm just Joe Average with my jets and my quads, but it sure is fun to dream when you see what people can do with these.
So we had just yesterday, it was the 15th, of course. So the August issue came out for digital subscribers. Obviously, if you're a print subscriber, you still won't see that issue for probably a week to 10 days. But in that issue, in the August issue, I had been talking to you because of all the excitement that you've had and dealing with all these multi-rotors and camera platforms. I asked you to write an article that you wrote called Remote Aerial Photography Platforms. And you wrote your experiences with a handful of different multi-rotors and gimbals and camera systems. And so those that have access to the digital edition can go and read this right now. And print subscribers will be seeing this in their mailbox soon. So, kind of give us an overview, John, about what you've learned and shared in this article. And you've talked about it some already, about how the technology is advanced. Just kind of, for those that haven't seen the article yet, kind of give us a little overview of what you've learned.
Well, and a lot of that, Jay, goes back to, again, like what some of the manufacturers and designers have done, like DJI and Autel, and I think DJI is the most well known, but there's definitely other players in the market. It's amazing what kind of tools for aerial media they've put into people's hands with their products. But having said that, again, like you're not really flying these aerial photography platforms. You're just positioning them in the sky, and they've got all kinds of little features in this software that'll generate shots for you. It's all very much automatic, and so for me, yeah, that's something that was missing. Was kind of recaptured when I started drifting back into FPV drones and playing with them. So like in that picture that was just up, you see the little Mavic or the little Mavic Mini I just showed you, and then that's a sub 250 gram class quad from iFlight there in the photo with it. So, very similar. They're both at or just under 250 grams, which is kind of a magic number right now with the FAA taking an interest in what we do with our drones, our quads. But yeah, like the one on the right there is heaps more fun to fly, to quote fly, than that DJI. But with this article, um, what I really tried to do, and I would say to all the readers, it's just my perspective. Everything I write, it's just my perspective. It's not gospel. It's just my take on the hobby as I enjoy it. And with this article, I just tried to catalog the pros and cons, as many of them as I could think of, when you're comparing the two, aerial photography platforms like DJI and Autel and some of the smaller companies, and the current crop of FPV quads, like the small ones, sub 250-gram class up to 5 inchers that can be flown on a 6S power system and, easily break 100 miles an hour. Now, one thing I haven't done that a lot of guys do is they put a GoPro or another action cam on their FPV quads. And then, you can run stabilization software. And I'm only using the DJI digital system. So, it either records in the goggles or you get a 1080 record if you use the full-blown air unit on the quad. So there's no stabilization. So it's up to you as a pilot to really generate that stable shot with your thumbs, with your skills. But it honestly can be done. If you practice, you can get some amazing shots without having a GoPro on it or running any stabilization software. We have a young man that just joined our local club here, and he just started flying FPV in December. And like guys younger than us, Jay, they tend to just eat this stuff up. And like his skill after just starting in December is insane. He was chasing a free-wing 90 millimeter F-22 the other day, and then he shared the video he got. And again, he was carrying a stripped-on GoPro. So just mind-blowing. The guy pulled like a full throttle loop in this big 90 millimeter jet, and Felipe pretty much chased him over the top power loop in his drone and kept him in frame. Just exciting footage. So whenever Philippe's at the club, then I end up being the guy flying the quad that's chasing the good guy flying the quad that's chasing the fixed plane. So like I was all excited because I got a shot with somebody flying a jet, and Philippe's like right on his 6 with his 5-inch drone hauling a GoPro, and I got both of them in frame, which I thought that was kind of cool too. It's the drone chasing the plane. So that was fun. But yeah, there's a lot of diversity in the FPV quads right now, and I'm a little late to the party, so like I tip my hat to all you guys that have been in this way longer than me and know way more about it than I do. I'm a noob, so the article maybe is slanted a little bit more from a noob. Might be very obvious to some of you more veteran guys, but I tip my hat and respect to all of you.
So, John, if somebody reads your article and they're like, hey, I want to try this. Maybe they've never, maybe they've flown model airplanes, but they've never flown a multi-rotor, and they say, hey, this sounds really cool. I want to try this. I want to, get comfortable so I can try to take some air-to-air video. So where would you steer them? Would you steer them into something like a DJI that's like you said, almost like a tripod in the sky? Or would you suggest they start from the beginning with a multi-rotor that's, that you basically fly pretty much the whole time?
I mean, I guess I would fire back a question at them first. Like, what's your ultimate goal? If you want to get insanely rude media, like that's your goal. You're media driven. You want to be able to take still shots from the air. You want to be able to take, super amazing panoramic sweeps. Then, obviously you go with an aero photography piece of equipment from DJI. But if you want to actually fly something and have fun flying it, and not let the aircraft kind of handle its own business, but you're going to be the one telling it what to do ultimately, then yeah, I'd say definitely like go with an FPV drone. I grabbed a Cinewhoop. It was a little Beta FPV 85X that has a onboard Turtle Caddx that records HD 1080 to an SD card. So, you're seeing an analog feed, but it's also recording a pretty high quality signal. And I had a ton of fun with that, just kind of cutting my teeth, and that really got me going. I got to go bigger. This is just too cool. So yeah, those Cinewhoops, again, they've been around for a while, but especially if you face like a winter season where you can't get outdoors much, you can have so much fun, like with a 1 cell or 2 cell Cinewhoop indoors. 2 cell might be pushing it a little bit, but those little 1S Cinewhoops, like I have a TBS that flies on a 1S 300 milliamp battery, and you can FPV around the house. Like, yeah, it's really cool. I have a 17-year-old daughter that's been around the hobby thanks to me her whole life, and she can fly. She's never really got passionate about it, but she's an avid gamer. So when Dad started playing around with FPV drones in the house, she kind of got interested. And so yeah, we would have fun. We'd charge up 8 batteries and take turns, seeing who could get upstairs and get into the back bedroom and come all the way back down without crashing. And yeah, same thing. It's been good for us as a family because my 17-year-old daughter loves to fly FPV with me. So like we'll go down to the park. She's flown every drone in my bag. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So to someone that, yeah, it's, which direction do you want to go? FPV is a ton of fun. Yeah, there's so many different directions you can go with that.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of options. And if you build your own too, you learn a lot there. So that's certainly an option.
Yeah, and since you said build your own, I got a show and tell. So
yeah,
this wasn't in the article. So this is my first scratch build. I didn't buy this way like every other drone that's in my bag. Those were all, I bought them that way, and you just a little bit of programming, bind them to your radio, and you're off to the races. This was a frame. There's a guy that just did a startup frame company, Ronin UAV, guy named Rob down in SoCal. And over on another forum-based website, Into FPV, he did a little giveaway for a second as he was rolling these out. And I won the frame in the giveaway. So then I bought all the components, the motors. It's got a DJI Caddx flight controller by iFlight. And yeah, you got to put it all together, program it, a lot of soldering. It's fun. There's that moment when you plug in the battery for the first time, like, wow, did I get everything soldered right? Did I cross any wires? Did I leave a stray strand of wire touching anything? So yeah, I used what they call I kind of made my own smoke stopper. You solder a fuse in series on your battery connector, so just in case anything goes south, you blow the fuse and not the electronics. And yeah, I was pretty stoked, man. I didn't really have any big issues. Took her down to the park and let her rip. And yeah, this is a sub 250 gram class drone. Again, on a 4S850, my flight durations, if I'm just cruising, I can squeeze 7 or 8 minutes out of it. And yeah, it's just amazing. So a little shout out to Ronin UAV. He's got a couple frames in the works if you want to check out his website.
Well, it's interesting because we hear a lot with model aircraft, airplanes specifically, or even helicopters, that people take a lot of pride in building their airplane. Not that there's anything wrong with ARFs or ready to flies or anything like that, but they'll talk about the pride they take in something they built and then it flies. And you can have that same experience with a multi-rotor, just like the one you just shared. You put it all together and did all the soldering and had that nervous moment the first time you plugged it in, but then you took it and flew it, and it was a great experience. So I think it's great because then if you have crashes and you have to fix them, if you've built them, then fix them is no problem because all the ins and outs that you need to do so, or even upgrading them. You learn there. Like I learned about computers. You said that your daughter is a gamer. Well, I was a gamer, a PC gamer, and I, back in the days of dial-up modems, I had to get faster modems so I could play games, or I needed better video cards or faster processors or more memory. So I kept building computers and upgrading computers. So the computer right next to me here, I built. I've got a case that looks like the Flying Tigers. It's a green case with the shark's mouth, and it's got the exhaust ports on the side. And I built this gaming rig, and it's the same thing. If you build model airplanes, helicopters, drones, you learn so much. So I think that's definitely somewhere that a lot of people like to get to. Maybe they don't start there, but they like to get there. Now, we also want to talk about the EDF Jets. We talked about you're really interested in EDF Jets, and you have an article about an EDF jet that's also in the August issue. So tell us a little bit about that jet that you did the review on.
Yeah, it's an 80 millimeter EDF jet from FMS, and it's being distributed in the U.S. here by Horizon Hobby. I think they're the North American FMS distributor. It's been slim pickings for EDF jets. I think a lot of that's pandemic related, and it's affected worldwide commerce. Now, FMS in their ad speak for this one, they were mentioning something about 2 years in development. I think it's obvious they did put some time into this. It's a pretty impressive jet, and sometimes you forget that it's foam when you take it out of the box. The finish is pretty stunning, the graphics that they lay down on it, and a lot of guys don't like these garish schemes like that, but that is modeled after a real world Rafale. That's the Dassault Rafale. If you sniff around on the internet, you'll see that's a scheme that there's at least one or two aircraft that sport that. But yeah, it's a pretty impressive airplane. A lot of fun. For an 80, that was the one thing I kind of had to ding it on, is that the flight durations were almost more like a 90 millimeter jet. And on our 90s, we're doing good to get 3 minutes, unless you stay way off the throttle and just barely do anything with it. But the jets, the thrill is going fast, and the sound of those multi-blade rotors, cranking out the air. So yeah, this one, if you stay off the throttle, you can squeeze 4 minutes out of it. It's got a lot of wing area, so like I don't know if we'll get like that there, like coming into land, you can kind of pitch the nose up. But I think in the video I included some footage where we really slipped it into a high alpha, and it'll parade around at an amazingly slow speed. Like the times that I've done that at the club, the guys just stand there in amazement, like, is that thing going to fall out of the sky? Like you shouldn't be able to go that slow. That thing's too big. So yeah, it's kind of different in that sense, because not all jets possess that same slow speed performance. But no, I liked it. I mean, I thought it was a pretty amazing product. Again, there haven't been a lot of jets released in the last year or two. I thought FMS did a great job with this one. That color scheme, yeah, it's bright, but you're never going to get confused. In-flight orientation, dark blue on the bottom, which is good also that the blue's on the bottom, because it doesn't gator up in those dark colors tend to gator up if they're left in the sun. So it's kind of always protected. The blue on the bottom, yellow on top. So even like with my older eyes, no problem with orientation. The other standout with this jet, I thought, was the suspension gear. So that runway, that's at Liberty RC here in Petaluma. We got about a 500-foot runway. And, I don't like to just stomp the throttle and force the jet into the air. I like to kind of take off in a more scale fashion. So maiden flight, I'm always a little bit nervous, because I got to get media of this thing, and I don't want to wad it up before I get all my pictures and video. I pour on the coals, and I'm about 2/3 down the runway, and I like to use flaps when I take off, because it usually helps me get a lot slower rotation, a lot more gradual rotation, instead of just popping into the air. Well, a delta wing jet like this, it's kind of hard to get them to release nice and gradual. They do tend to kind of pop off the runway. This one comes pre-programmed. It has a little mixing box. So on the trailing edge of the wing, you got flaps inboard, ailerons outboard. And the mixing box, it's all hard coated. You really can't make any adjustments to it in your transmitter. So following my usual MO, maiden flight, well, I'm gonna put the flaps down. It's actually more crow, because the flaps come down, the ailerons go up a little bit, and you're not getting much flap effect as much as like that helps you to lose speed. I think I'm correct in saying that. So yeah, picture this thing thundering down the runway. I'm 2/3 of the way down the runway, and I'm like jumping up and down on the elevator trying to get this thing to rotate, and it's like ignoring me. And I'm thinking, I didn't put enough throw. What's going on? Command decision. I got to dump the throttle. Oh man, this is not going to be good. And that thing went off the end of the runway. It's not rough, but it's not smooth. And I thought, oh, here we go, walk of shame. It probably ripped every piece of landing gear out of this foam fuselage. And I was blown away, Jay, when I picked it up, and like the landing gear was fine. And yeah, since then, all the flights I've put on mine, I'll occasionally get a little too slow on final, and instead of nice little kiss style touchdown, I'll plop it in. And that landing gear has taken every last bit of abuse I've thrown at it. So yeah, give the big shout out of praise to FMS for the landing gear on that one. They did a great job.
Well, you've certainly flown a lot of jets, EDF jets. You've reviewed a lot of jets for us. Do you prefer military jets over civilian jets, or does it not matter to you?
I like them all. I mean, if they're powered by an EDF unit, then it's good to me. There's not really too many civilian EDF jets. They tend to all be military. It seems like. So yeah, they're kind of few and far between. You might occasionally get, like I'm thinking of a Hobby Lobby Learjet, but that goes way back in time. Yeah, most of the jets. Motion RC did that pretty sweet airliner. That was a twin 70 or twin 80. I forget. I never owned one, never got to fly one, but a fellow at our club did one up in a Hawaiian Airlines scheme, and it was stunning, just an amazing aircraft. So, yeah, it's not too many commercial EDFs or general aviation. They do tend to be military.
So when you go, if you're going to go fly your EDF jets, what currently today or recently, what are your go-to jets right now, EDF jets that you're going to take to fly?
The Rafael's been a favorite again because it's like one of the newest jets out there, and I love it. They did a great job with it. I bought the 80 millimeter T-33. It's a free wing. That's a pretty impressive jet. Kind of a trainer jet, like in real life. I feel like it. And it kind of translates into the model. It's pretty forgiving, but boy, it's fast too. Like when you step on it, it gets across the sky in a hurry. So that one's kind of a thrill. What else? I've got two 70 millimeter jets that are my favorites, kind of go-tos because they fly on a 6S 3000, 3300. One's an FMS. It was originally FMS, and then I think they handed it off to Banggood, and now it's a capital Q, capital T, QT. But I think it was ultimately made by FMS. 70 millimeter T45, just a great flyer. And then my other favorite was the FMS 70 millimeter Yak 130. I flat out wore one of those out. I mean, just flew it until the foam was so soft, and it was just so, yeah, just I flat out wore it out, and I bought another one because, yeah, it's just one of my favorite jets.
So what is it about jets that makes you interested in them? I mean, obviously you own prop planes and you've done prop driven aircraft reviews. What is it about jets that really draws you to them?
I think probably the evolution in the power systems. I mean, when jets first got going, even with lipos, I mean, I'm thinking of GWS F-15, and they had a 4 or 5 blade impeller, and the noise that all that made was just it was awful. I mean, it was a shriek. It was a banshee shriek. And then people started drifting into higher blade count fans, and they really started taking on more of a turbine like sound. I mean, you get a really amazing efflux, and some of them like that Rafael, when you punch it over the top, full throttle, just the noise that it generates is so cool. It's kind of, they're close, and some would scoff, but I mean, like if you've ever seen turbine powered RC jets, now they'll really blow your mind. I mean, I've never gone in that direction. My pockets aren't that deep, but yeah, the EDFs are much more affordable, and some of that same thrill. The current crop of high blade count fans sound pretty impressive and perform pretty impressive too. Probably the one negative is, typically pretty short flight durations. You can maybe, get 5-6 minutes unless you can stuff like a bigger pack in it, and then you get into higher wing loading and all that. But yeah, so pros and cons of jets, but just something about them. I don't know. They're fast. They're noisy, but in a good way. Yeah, a lot of fun.
The first jet that I ever saw flown electric was a Fantastic Models F-86. It was flown on a nickel metal hydride pack, and it was at full throttle the entire flight, and that was just enough to fly it just beyond a stall. No aerobatics, no loops, no rolls, no nothing.
Yeah, I remember
full throttle.
those days.
Yeah, and how far we've come. And the thing that I used to not like about EDF jets was that high-pitched whine.
Oh yeah,
to your point.
Awful.
Now they sound fairly realistic. I mean, they really are much more pleasing in that regard, and obviously more efficient. I mean, it's amazing that you can get 4-minute flights, 5-minute flights, depending on the jet. And you talked about nothing against GWS, but talking about older foam aircraft, all the the marks that were left behind from the molding process, and now they come and they're just wonderfully painted and detailed, and you have to look really hard to see, any marks from the molding or the way they're made. I mean, they're almost like you want to just display them. They look so nice now.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Like the evolution of foam jets has been an exciting ride compared to where it was a decade ago. Or yeah, and I'm trying to think what it was called. I can't even remember. So like when guys would power a jet like with a 2-cycle engine, remember that? And there was a name for that. And I'm getting old, I forget things like this. But I remember one guy had, like an internal combustion powered jet at our field, and just super high RPM, super noisy, underperforming, at least the ones I saw. And it was just kind of sad, like to even go down that road. But back then, if you didn't go that route, then you had like an F-15 with a prop on the nose, which was, kind of lame too, and all things considered. But yeah, so these current EDF jets really can present a realistic appearance in flight. It's pretty cool. Nothing better than, ripping an EDF jet down the center line of the runway at full throttle, a couple feet off the ground. That's about all I can do with my jets, honestly. But man, I love those wide open passes down, slow and fast. It's great. It's a thrill.
Do you remember what the first EDF jet was that you flew?
It might have been like, I'm picturing a MiG, an Alpha, ALFA. It was a line of Depron foam jets that Hobby Lobby sold back in the day. They were all hand launch, but they were pretty cool. They made a MiG-15, they made an F-86. No landing gear or anything. They were super light. And I think like my MiG-15, you could, if the grass was wet and trimmed pretty close, you could put it on its belly and like do a ROG style takeoff off the grass. Yeah, I think that might have been my first EDF jet. But that Depron was pretty fragile. Like if you didn't nail your landing or just one cartwheel, and it was kind of pretty tough to make it look good again. But yeah, those were some pretty realistic looking jets back in the day. Those Alphas from Hobby Lobby.
Well, and then it's interesting too that both when Hobbyco and Horizon came out with the micros, you had the F-86 and the MiG, and that was really interesting to be able to fly a decently performing jet that's small, the UMX line for Horizon.
Yeah, definitely. Shout out to Horizon for those UMX birds. I mean, both the proppies and the EDF jets. I had the A10. Yeah, a ton of fun and an amazingly small package. And then you add in a little stabilization, with their AS3X or whatever gyro you want to use. And pretty amazing how something that light and that small can fly like a much larger aircraft.
So what do you think, John, in your mind, what's next for EDF jets? I mean, as we've talked about the evolution of the EDF jets, I mean, where do you think it goes from here?
It'd be nice if they could develop, and I read headlines and see rumblings about maybe some improved battery technology to get our flight durations out a little bit. That would be nice. Because again, typically, like, I've got a 90 millimeter MiG-17, and I think my countdown's set at 3 minutes to give myself a little cushion if I need to execute a missed approach and take a second attempt at landing. So, I mean, 3 minutes goes by pretty quick. It'd be nice if we could routinely extend our flight durations on our jets up to 6, 7, 8 minutes. I mean, there are occasionally jets that you can manage longer flight durations like that with a little judicious use of the throttle, or maybe running oversized packs. But typically us jet guys know, we could use some better power density in our lipo packs or whatever technology or chemistry they can come up with for us.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I mean, not just for jets, but for all of electrics.
Yeah, and probably something's going to come down the pike, I'm sure. I mean, again, I see headlines there. They are working on alternate technologies. So yeah, I mean, who would have thought this is where we'd be with brushless power systems and EDFs and lipos 20 years ago or 30 years ago? We never would have guessed it would be this good. So yeah, it's hopefully going to get even better as time goes on.
And so when you're not flying models, building models, or photographing models, you're running, you're a runner, and you're riding horses. Is that right?
Yeah, those are other things I do. My wife's been an equestrian her whole life, and when I was a kid, we had a horse, but I really wasn't much into it. But then spending a lot of time with my wife's mare, and I thought, it's kind of neat. They're amazingly intelligent animals, and we live out on the West Coast, so there's a lot of cool places that you can trail ride. And a lot of people fly out here and take a vacation to ride horses on the beach, and I could hang up from this and go throw the horses in the trailer and head out to the beach. And how cool is that? So it's pretty fun and rewarding. My wife will tell you I've gone off more than a few times, like unplanned get-offs, because I don't always listen to what the horse is trying to tell me. And I never had a broken bone until I started riding horses, and I've cracked ribs and punctured a lung and got to overnight in the hospital. But yeah, I'm still riding. It's pretty fulfilling, pretty neat to be on a horse, and that you can get up on an animal that big and it'll take orders from you and be happy to be with you and do whatever you ask it. That's pretty exciting. And then, yeah, running, I'm getting old. I'm trying to stay fit. My father and I ran a bunch when I was in my 20s. And yeah, I took up running here maybe 5-6 years ago. My weight had gotten north of 200, and it didn't need to be there. So yeah, I started running and got a bunch of weight off. And now my wife and daughter and my wife's cousin are all excellent cooks, and they feed me well. So I'm conscripted to keep running. If I want to eat the foods that they feed me, I got to keep running. So yeah, I try to kill two birds with one stone. I live really close to where I work, so instead of firing up my truck and driving to work, I run to work and run home. So I kind of get the exercise in and get work in, and when I get home, it's all done. So
do you have any projects that you're currently working on? In as far as aero modeling is concerned, are you building another drone, or you got another airplane you're working on, or what's the newest thing for Jon Barnes?
Well, the FPV guys will tell you right now, we're hard pressed to lay our hands on anything DJI digital. You can't hardly find a digital camera, a CADX, an air unit. Just supply and demand and pandemic and chip shortage and all that. We're hurting. So I managed to grab like an extra DJI air unit, and I've got another CADX. And so yeah, I'm kind of poking around. I want to get another frame, build another 3 or 4 inch. I want to start watching this young fellow named Philippe fly at our club, and he rips that 5-inch 6S bird like nothing. He inspires me to try to push myself a little bit. I've got a 5-inch iFlight Nazgul. That's a pretty impressive beast. I'm not worthy of it, honestly, with the FPV skills that I currently have. But yeah, I kind of aspire to get good with that. I might pick up an action cam, because that's really where it's at. Putting a stripped down GoPro on these birds, you can get even better footage than just the onboard digital units. So yeah, fixed wing, I don't really have anything going on in the garage right now. It's been pretty bleak. Not a whole lot of products coming out, at least that I've been able to get my hands on. So yeah, just kind of probably going to build another drone. I had a lot of fun building this little one here from Ronin. And so let's build another one. Let's build another digital drone.
Perfect. And you, as you said, you do some drone flying in the house as well, so that's always good, especially for us here in Indiana. We don't like to go out so much in the wintertime, or at least I don't. I'm from Florida originally, so I've got a Inductrix and a tiny Whoop, and those definitely keep me entertained. And real flight, I fly on my real flight simulator, just keep the skills up, so to speak. I remember I went out and flew at AMA, and it was about 28 degrees, and I flew one of an Andrew Jeske Slick that was electric, and I put about a 6-minute flight on it, and I landed, and my hands were numb. I had gloves on, but they were fingerless, and my hands were numb.
It doesn't matter, I know.
Yeah, and it had a Dean's connector, a Dean's plug, and I couldn't unplug it. My hands were so cold, I couldn't unplug it. So I didn't want to transport it connected. So I ended up putting it right in front of my vehicle and putting my radio right next to it, and getting in my vehicle with the heat on and warming my hands up for 3 or 4 minutes so I could unplug the battery. And I thought, yeah, I don't know. I tried one of those mitts that your hands go in the mitt.
Yeah, the transmitter mitt.
Feels very strange,
Yeah. I remember those days, because I grew up in Ohio. So like when I talked about us guys after work, shooting up to the field, we did it in the snow too. I mean, we'd put floats on our plane or skis, and you're trying to adjust your needle valve with the prop wash super chilling your hand, and but good times. We had a lot of fun doing it. I always tease you and rub it in, living where I do now, we're about 30, 40 miles from the Pacific Ocean. So our weather is so moderate, and it doesn't rain here. It doesn't, I mean, we're in a drought. We kind of wish it would rain, but typically our weather patterns here where I live, we get no rain from April or May all the way up until October, November. I mean, not a drop. So, you can fly all you want. And then even in the wintertime, like, you know, our temperatures don't get that cold. We might get down to freezing at night, but it always warms up to like 50 during the day. So yeah,
Right.
from the standpoint of being able to fly, this is the promised land because we can fly year round. There's never a off season where, it's too cold or just a little bit of rain might shut us down now and then.
Well, before we wrap up, so what's left on your RC bucket list? I mean, do you have aircraft you want to fly, or events you want to go to, or things you want to build, or what's on your bucket list for RC?
It's I mean, I'm pretty satisfied where I'm at right now. There's always going to be some other segment of this hobby though that will pique my curiosity or pull me in. I mentioned I've never flown a turbine jet. I've never got my waiver. I started down that route. I picked up a trainer and I had a turbine and then I just got cold feet. Like, dude, you're not that big. Like your pockets are not that deep. You're going to $4,000, $5,000, put it up in the air and have a bad day. No, I can't do that. So I think I sold all that and put the money in camera gear because I don't throw my camera gear up in the air. I'm always holding it. So that seemed like a better way to spend the money, but I'd still, I think that'd be a thrill to actually maybe push myself and fly a turbine, get my waiver. I don't know if I'll ever do it. Yeah, I don't know. I think technology will probably help me decide what is next for me because, things just keep changing. And as we get new products and new things come out, yeah, sometimes it's fun some guys don't like to be an early adopter, but sometimes it's fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll see what technology throws our way.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on the show today, and I also appreciate all the contributions you've made to several of our publications over the years, and look forward to continuing to work with you. Definitely want to remind viewers that the next show will be Friday, August 20th. So we'll be looking forward to having another show. We'll be announcing the guest for that show soon. And Jon, again, thank you so much. And make sure you read Jon's articles in the August issue, Remote Aero Photography Platforms and FMS Model. And I always said Raphael, but I don't know that I'm saying it the right way. How do you say it, Jon?
Oh, I don't know. I think it's a French word, and I don't speak French. So yeah, take your best guess. I don't know how many syllables are there. I'm probably not saying it. Probably not saying it right either, Jay. But hey, thanks for having me on the show. It was fun. I've enjoyed working with you all these years, and I hope we have a lot of good years left in both of us that we can keep it going. It's a great hobby. Great way to relax for sure.
Yeah, and thank you to Dogfight Apparel for sending us a shirt and hat and socks, and I'll be doing a write-up about the apparel that I received in the October issue and worth a closer look. So thanks everyone for tuning in, and see you next month, Friday, August 20th.